Buongiorno tutti. I am so sorry that I can't be with you all here today. I've been really looking forward to the event, but unfortunately old age has caught up and doctor's orders I have to stay here in Brussels, and without any way trying to compare myself with Ken and Tarek, it gives me a little bit of a glimpse of the sacrifices that they've made in being basically interned in Ireland and not being able to travel, for their heroic stance in trying to defend our neutrality and international law. And just to let you know that we have been following here their freedom walk every day. Very well done with that. Cross-section of MEPs have signed questions to the Parliament here about the violation of your human rights, and we are going to try and raise the case again in Brussels next week. But I suppose Shannon in some ways has been the public face of the breaches of Ireland's neutrality, and I suppose the points I want to make today really are concentrating on the other side of the equation that maybe doesn't get as much attention, and that's the whole drive to EU militarization. Because on the one hand, we've had successive Irish governments bending the knee to the American establishment, pretending that we're neutral, but letting hundreds of planes pass through Shannon every year with tens of thousands of troops on it, and they pretend that these people are not engaged in any wartime activity. An absolute fallacy. Of course, the cat is often let out of the bag by the likes of Mike Pence or the excellent work of WikiLeaks in revealing the cables. But what is less concentrated on is the bending of the knee to the European establishment. And the only people who have the brass neck to say that our neutrality isn't being eroded are Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. We had Micheál Martin during the European elections trying to tell us that it was a conspiracy to talk about a European army. I mean, seriously, this man, when the leader of his own group here said a European army of 20,000 people by 2024, let's do it. We know, of course, as well that Fine Gael organised to get any reference to a European army taken out of the EPP election manifesto. So they know well what is going on here, and you only have to look at the election of Ursula von der Leyen by a slight majority of MEPs here. This is a woman, Defence Minister from Germany, who's been quite open. She says the EU should increase funding in the areas of external border protection, internal security and defence-related research and industrial development. She's actually been very upfront about the success that's already gone on that. She tells us Europe has to build an army, and then she says, well, sure, look, we should be proud of ourselves as well because it's already taking shape. She says now 25 countries have joined force in a security initiative we call PESCO, voluntarily, because we see the obvious benefits and because it's in Europe's security interests. Now I ask you, the fact that one of those volunteers, with no compulsion whatsoever, is neutral Ireland, I have to say, is utterly sickening. And when you look back at the militarisation, we've heard a lot of talk recently about European values and the rule of law and all of this nonsense. But one of the things they talk about is Europe has been a promoter of peace. And yes, there has been largely peace on the continent of Europe. But previously, European powers colonised Africa. American colonial powers did and still are interfering in Latin and South America. We've had the more recent wars for oil resources and regime change in the Middle East. But the latest driver of war on a global scale is the arms industry. And it is located here at the heart of the European Union. And the Irish government, like many of its European peers, is a willing lapdog in wagging the tail of that dog. And just to give you a few statistics on the scale of what's going on here. Between 2012 and 2017, the combined annual EU lobbying budget for the top 10 European arms companies increased from 2.8 million to 5.6 million. In 2015, the European Commission set up a group of personalities on research defence. Now, I'm not sure what the personalities were, if they were movie stars draped over bombs or exciting people or something, but in any case, their job is and was to advise on how the European Union can support defence research programmes relevant to the common security and defence policy. And the group was heavily dominated by the arms industry itself, CEOs from MBDA, Indra, Saab, Airbus, BAE Systems, Leonardo, all the rest of them, the top of the European arms industry. And given that this is the advisory body, well, you can be very sure what type of advice they're going to come out with. So it was no surprise when in September 16, the Commission announced the establishment of a preparatory action on defence fund research, which granted the arms industry 90 million in defence research between 2017 and 2019. And be clear here, the industry argued and got that they wanted 100% funding from the European Union. So normally in Horizon 2020 or something, the industry coughs up 20%. Here, they're coughing up nothing. And not only that, they negotiated and got to keep the intellectual property rights of that research paid for by European taxpayers. Of course, 90 million is an absolute pittance in the scale of things, but that was just testing the water for what was to come later. And in June 2017, what came later was the European Defence Fund, a fund of 40 billion up to 2027 between direct EU funding and member state contributions for research and development of weapons and military equipment. And Juncker made the point that this was a drastic step change in European defence. And it was, and it is, because for the first time, European citizens' money is being directly spent on weapons and on arms. And after that, we had, of course, PESCO, and we had Ireland running up and joining PESCO, which wasn't inevitable. We didn't have to join it at all. There's no security threat. We've better things to be spending billions on, as do the citizens of Europe, than this. Yet they tried to sneak that through at the 11th hour of the Dáil in Christmas recess, in the run-up to the Christmas recess in 2017. And without the diligence of activists like many of you gathered here at the conference, with some of us oppositionists in the Dáil, they would have got away without any debate at all. Of course, we got a debate, but obviously the outcome, we still signed up to PESCO, and they try and model that it's some sort of energy saving, efficiency saving, interoperability. And I can tell you for nothing, when you hear the word interoperability, which pops up everywhere, it's a code word for integration and further securitisation across Europe. And it's not out of touch with the rest of what the government has been doing. They sign us up to battle groups. They send our peacekeepers to take active part in Mali on behalf of a UN Charter article to maintain peace through force, the irony. They push us into PESCO. They send senior Department of Defence officials to UK arms fairs. They allow NATO warships use our ports, going wherever they go. They send our army to the Mediterranean to take part in military operations, and yet we haven't even got the decency to pay our defence forces personnel a living wage. We haven't got enough money to have enough sailors to police our territorial coast. So this is where we've got to. It came on the back of years of, I suppose, an undermining of our neutrality by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in particular, rush speed in latter years, but sadly assisted by Labour and the Greens when they went in to govern with them. And those lessons have to be learned for future coalitions as we are on the verge of another election. I think one of the important lessons has been learned is that given such was the outcry over Ireland's involvement in the Iraq War, that the answer to the establishment now is to keep it quiet. Don't talk about these issues. And because of the weakness of the media and the quietness of the Fourth Estate, they've got away with this. It's a topic that's in the hearts and minds of Irish people. They love being neutral. They want to defend it. But the scale of how much that's been eroded has been kept from them by inadequate journalism and poor political representation. And to be honest with you, that's why events like today are of critical importance. And I am gutted that I can't participate in the dialogue with you, because this is where it's at. The recent European budget, which is going through this place over the next while, just to give you a scale of the things. and to let you know that the EU is very much putting its money where its military mouth is. You all know that we're on the verge of catastrophic climate catastrophe. When the budget that deals with that area, it's called the LIFE budget, it's seen its budget going up from 3.2 billion to 4.8 billion. Okay, it's a little bit, it's scale of the catastrophe, not great, but it's something. But we should register that this figure is less than half of the allocation being given to the European Defence Fund. It's less than a tenth of the 55 billion that's been given under the combined headings of borders and security and defence. And let's remember that it's the same companies that are making the bombs that are driving people to Europe that are benefiting from the borders and the profits in the barriers to keep them out when they flee for safety. So when we talk about European values, that's the type of values that are being defended and promoted here by the lobbyists who infest these corners. And you know, when you look at alternative ways of organising society, the money's been given to alternative resolution conflicts and stability and peace is a pathetic 29 million being spent. So there you are, that's the priorities. And without really upsetting you, to really, really be the icing on the cake, when you look at how much our citizens at home are suffering from the housing crisis and so on, and the government won't declare an emergency, and they tell us that the fiscal rules have to be respected, military expenditure is exempt from the fiscal rules, so they can be broken. Any amount of money can be spent on that, nobody cares. But when it comes to looking after citizens, it's a different story. Is it any wonder then that we hear the arms companies here saying, we're not vendors, we're partners. They are with the establishment, but the message of the conference that we have here today of a world beyond war is that we too are partners. And the power of the people is far stronger than the insipid, disgusting commercial lobbying that goes in this place. I salute all of you. I'm so sorry I can't be there. I look forward to examining the appalling behaviour that continues in Shannon, to be back on the streets with ye, be it here or in Ireland again. Every success for the rest of the conference, and I'll see you all soon.